What are 3 things that everyone should know about buying a home? What are the scariest perils for people to pay attention to? What are the scariest ones for a homeowner? So what are 3 simple things a person should do when touring the home they want to buy? People say, shouldn't my inspector just find that? We talk a lot about roof age. Who cares? So what don't agents tell you about a property that you might want to buy? Insurance companies are obsessed by that piece of information. Buyers aren't, but they should be. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ships at sea, it is time for this week's episode of Property of the Week with PropertyLens. For those of you who don't know or joining us for the first time, as always, I am Bob Frady, co-founder and CEO of PropertyLens, and with me, as always,
John Siemen, co-founder and president of PropertyLens.
So, John, we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Rather than going through a specific property, we're going to ask some questions of each other, like what are some of the things that we've seen in real estate and going through reports and buying houses and all that fun stuff. So, to give our audience some insight, here's the kind of thinking that we bring to the table when looking at real estate, based upon the thousands of reports that we've looked at and the dozens of people that we've talked to on this podcast who also look at real estate every day. So how about it, John? What do you say?
All right, the pop quiz version of PropertyLens.
Okay, so I will start with this question, John. What are 3 things that everyone should know about buying a home before they walk in the door?
3 things that everybody should know before buying a home. Skipping all the financial stuff, because that's all the advice that you ever get when you look at all the things. Things that I would want to know before I walked in the door. What is the property exposed to? Now, yes, I have spent a significant portion of my career doing risk analysis and risk generation for insurance companies, but you want to know what's it exposed to. Perfect example, last night, Reddit thing popped over. This woman was asking, why has this house been on market so long? And she put the address in there, and it was up in San Jose. So I ran the address, and it's like, well, it's in a flood zone. And so if you're getting a mortgage, you're going to have to pay for flood insurance. And flood, by the way, is the #1 cause of loss in the U.S. You might want to know that before you even go look at the property, because if it's in a flood zone, you may sit there and go, no. And so knowing the exposures before you even look at a place should be high on the list. 2, what's its history? Yeah, the person who's lived there 5, 6, maybe 10 years can tell you that history if they want to be honest about it. But what happened before then? What took place? And most of the time, they don't know. They probably didn't even ask when they bought the house. So they can't even relay the history to you. We can. So we'll know the permits before then. We'll know what property taxes look like. We'll know roof sizing and things along those lines, images. So there's a lot of history that the current owner, unless they've been in it since day one, can't tell you. Not they don't want to, they just can't. They don't know. So that would be the second thing. And then the third, what are the variable costs? You've got your 15 or 30-year fixed mortgage. You know what's going to have to go out from now until forever to pay for the place. But what are the variable costs? What can you expect in repairs for the next couple of years? How much is your taxes going to go up? How much are your insurance rates going to go up? So all of the variables to try and bring home what a true cost of ownership is going to be, those would be the 3 things for me. What about you?
If I were thinking about 3 things to go into a real estate transaction, #1, as the buyer of the home, you are probably the least important person in this transaction. You're the most important in that you bring the money, but nobody's focused on you. Everyone is focused on the seller, getting the maximum amount price for that house, trying to overlook things that might be wrong with the house. And frankly, both of your agents, both the selling agent and the buying agent in many cases, are paid by the seller. So you as the buyer who has to live with this property, you're the least important person in this transaction. That's number one. So you want to be aware. Number two, disclosures sometimes worth the paper that they're printed on. Now, some states it's very good. Most states it's not. It's always buyer beware. You got to be aware that once you take possession of the house, all that risk transfers to you. It's all yours. So disclosures are great, but knowing what to ask and knowing what to look for is way more important. And then number three, what's the history of the house? You know, the current owner may know, they may have been there 30 years, but they might not. They might have only been there 3 or 4 years. So what has gone on at this place? And I would add a fourth thing, and that is real estate is very time compressed. I know I said 3, now it's 4. Real estate is very time compressed, and that time compression does not give you any advantage. It's actually meant to make sure that you skip things and to make sure that you overlook things because you're so desperate to close it so quickly. So make sure you know that the odds are stacked against you as the buyer. You want to make sure you're doing everything that you can to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. I said 3, I said 4. John, what is a notable real estate experience that you have had over the course of your lifetime?
My real estate experiences have been pretty boring. Bought a brand new house prior to this house, built this house, so bought a piece of dirt. Don't ever build your own house. You get nothing else out of this, just get that. And then bought a place at a beach, which was all of 6, 7 years old at the time, 5, whatever it was. So, new builds, less concern, and plus did a lot of research. But when my daughter was looking to buy a house and she went out, this was pre-pandemic, with a realtor, and she looked at 9 houses the first day that they went out and came back, and we were focused on a different company. And I said, which one did you like? And she gives me the address, and I look it up, and I'm like, nope, it's an F for Wildfire. You already live in an F for Wildfire. We don't need another F for Wildfire. So they go out the next weekend, look at another 9 houses. She comes back. I asked her, which one did you like? She gives me the address. And my first question was, were there bars on the window? And she's like, no, I don't think so. Why? And I'm like, because it's an F for crime. And I don't care that you're a 2nd-degree black belt, no. So they go out the third weekend, look at another 9 houses, same process. Which one did you like? Comes back and gives me the address. And I said, is there a large park nearby? And she's like, yeah, how did you know that? I'm like, well, the house is 250 feet from an EPA Superfund site, and the largest EPA Superfund site in Escondido is a park, and it's a park because it's so large an area they can't mitigate it. We're just going to hope that the time clock eventually runs out on it. And it's not the realtor's fault that she didn't know that it was an F or bad for crime. In California, the realtor can't even tell you about crime. How is the realtor to know that there's an EPA Superfund site literally across the street from the house? They can't, but I could. And so had a meeting with the realtor, playing adult version of Battleship. She was looking at the MLS. I was going through and basically saying everything that was why you would buy that house. Fast forward, we added in some money, changed the buying parameters, and she's lived in the house happily ever after. So, and fast forward to all of you realtors looking at this, when it came time to buy the beach house after selling that company, I had already pre-scored everything, called her up, handed her the pre-scored list, and bought the most expensive one on the list. So more than made up for the effort involved. But the process is, if you don't know, bad things happen. I was trying to take the bad things happening part, at least the part I could control, out of the equation.
That's amazing. 3 different properties, all of which look good on paper, had 3 glaring problems, none of which was disclosed in the real estate process.
Nope.
That's pretty eye-opening.
What about you? I know you've had some real estate adventures.
I've bought a lot of houses. I think I bought 9 houses or something like that, which means I've looked at probably 1,000 houses. And plus, it's fun just to go look at houses. But there's 2 things, one on the sell side and one on the potential buy side. On the selling side, the house I owned in Mission Viejo, California, had an unpermitted addition on it, and I didn't know. I had no clue. It was never disclosed to me in the buying process. So when I went to sell that house, the buyer was smart to like, is that permitted? City came out, it's not permitted, had to rip it out before I could sell the house. So it cost me $2,000 to rip this out. And then it cost them another $2,000 to go back in and rebuild it with the permit. I'm like, it was crazy that it held up the entire sale of the house because this addition was not permitted. And I had no clue. No clue. Was never disclosed. On the buying side, I was touring a place in South Dakota last month. And it's a beautiful condo downtown Sioux Falls. And I'm looking around and I'm like, there's a creek over there. I'm like, is this a flood zone? And the realtor said, I don't know. And I looked and I pulled up my PropertyLens report on my phone. I looked it up. Turns out 500-year flood zone. And I was out. Like, I don't want the risk. It's just not worth it to me. And it was a beautiful condo. And the realtor didn't know. And this is the kind of stuff that you got to know because it's all right there at your fingertips. It's all available. Those are 2 of the more notable things that have happened to me in buying houses in my history. If you could go back and talk to your younger self about real estate, what advice would you give?
Oh, see, that's not the question that you put on the sheet.
Yeah, it
You
is.
just said if I could go back in time and give my younger self advice, what would I give myself? So the advice I would have given myself was go ahead and ask her out because what's the worst that can happen? She could say no.
Yeah. Well,
Well, yeah.
okay. We're not a lovelorn podcast here or a real estate,
Really? Because
podcast.
people fall in love with houses all the time.
There you go. Ask the
Make
house
bad
out.
decisions based upon falling in love with houses.
Yeah,
They should
for
swipe
sure.
right and they swipe left, and they shouldn't do that.
It's
All right.
always tragic when that
So
happens.
with real estate, I'm really not prepared to answer that question. But
Okay. You can ask me
I
that
would
question.
say you need to be as educated as you can possibly be. You are making, for most people, the most expensive purchase that they will ever make. Yes, it's theoretically an investment, not in all markets. You, as the buyer, are the one bringing all of the money to the table. And I hate to say this to you, especially if you're listening to this, because we do love you as a viewer. You're the most ignorant person in the transaction. And the whole idea behind PropertyLens is to make you not the most ignorant person in the transaction.
Some people say that ignorance is bliss, not
Not in this
necessarily in
case.
real estate. Not in real
And
estate.
if you look at the preponderance of our customers and who are buying reports, most of them are professional real estate investors. And, you as an amateur should be using the same tools that the professionals use. What about you? If you could go back in time and give yourself real estate advice besides asking about the permit in Mission Viejo, what would you do?
If I was going to go back and talk to my younger self about real estate, there are 2 words that I would use. And it comes from my Boy Scouts model. Be prepared. It's like, be prepared. You think that if you get an inspection, that's going to solve it. You think your realtor's rooting for you, that's going to solve it. That doesn't solve it. You have to live in that house. You are responsible for everything that happens after the sale closes. So be prepared. Get as much information as possible. 20, 30, 40 years ago, that information was hard to dig up. Now it's fingertip access to it. Be prepared. It's the smartest thing that you can do whenever you're looking at real estate. And if I had known 40 years ago, I'd have bought more real estate. I'd have been more prepared. Those are the things I would tell my younger self.
There you go. Good advice.
What are the scariest perils for people to pay attention to?
Every peril is scary if it's happening to you. That said, flood is the #1 peril in the U.S. More losses every year to flood. And flood is, sometimes fast with a fast flash.
Hold on a second. Did we do a poll about this
Yes,
last
we
year?
did.
What did that have to say?
The poll happened to say that I think it was wildfires that won. The poll was, which are the scariest? You have to look at which are the most widespread and which are the most likely to affect you, right? You just mentioned flood with the condo in South Dakota, right? So flood is the first one. When it comes to it, you got to look at flood. Then you got to look at your other exposures. If you're buying on a hillside in Southern California and you don't think it can have wildfire, you're probably not smart enough to be buying on a hillside in Southern California.
Yeah, because the trees are all up the hill. Fire only burns uphill.
Yeah. That'll fail your wildfire model very quickly because we have winds that blow fire down the canyon just as quickly as it blows up the canyon. You have to look at wildfire. You have to look at tornadoes and hurricanes and hail and earthquake. Those are your big 6 when you include flood. Other stuff is very specific to a location, like sinkholes. Only Florida gets sinkholes. First of all, it's wrong. 32 states have sinkholes. You can't get a sinkhole in California. We don't have the right dirt. Other places have mine subsidence, which are man-made sinkholes. Other places have, frozen pipes and ice dams and things along those lines. And as you know, ice dams are bad because it makes it rain inside your house. That's
No
just a
fun.
terrible
There's
thing to have happen.
no fun.
So those are very regional in nature. Hail technically can happen anywhere. Tornadoes can happen anywhere. Wildfires, and everybody thinks it's a California problem. And it certainly is a California problem, but every state is subject to wildfire risk. Every state is subject to hail, tornadoes, floods, and with the notable exception of Florida, pretty much every state can get an earthquake, whether it's a traditional earthquake that nature takes care of, or it's a fracking earthquake, which is man-made. There are lots of different ways to have an impact on your investment. Those would be, to me, the ones that I would be wanting to know what my risk is as I walked into that property.
In thinking about hazards, there's really a couple of ways to look at it. What are the scariest ones for a homeowner, and what are the scariest ones for a homeowner when combined with an insurance company? From a homeowner standpoint, the scariest peril is flood, because it can really happen almost anywhere, and it's destructive. Half of floods happen outside of flood zones, and people aren't prepared for that at all. That's not so scary to an insurance company because the insurance company doesn't pay for flood damages. That's on you. So it's super scary for a homeowner because your insurance company won't cover those damages. You have to cover those damages. And so flood and flood awareness is certainly job one. When I think about it in terms of the homeowner plus an insurance company, it's hail. It's very loud in a hailstorm, surprisingly loud, and you have no idea what's going to happen. First of all, you don't even know whether it's coming. It might be rain, it might be snow. Well, generally, it might be rain. Who knows? And all of a sudden, these golf balls start falling from the sky, smashing everything in its path, which is pretty scary. It can mess up your car, can mess up your roof, if your dog's outside, then your dog's going to be yelping. So I think that those are the two that broadly are two giant perils to be concerned with. Now, earthquake's no fun. You have no idea that an earthquake's coming, none at all. You just sort of sit there and hope that it doesn't tip everything over. But things like wildfire is very addressable. You know where those zones are. You can locate them fairly intelligently. Same with sinkholes and all of that. And right, the rest is regional. For people in the Southeast, it's almost always hurricane, which is partially flood as well. What caused the damage, the wind or the water, is a big discussion that you'll have with insurance companies. And can you even get insurance in some of these flood-prone zones or hurricane-prone zones? The answer is no, you can't. For me, it's flood and hail are the two big ones, and the rest are regional risks. So what are 3 simple things a person should do when touring the home they want to buy?
3 simple things. Well, I'm going with under the assumption that if you are watching this, you've already got your PropertyLens report on the home you're about to tour. Otherwise, that would be number 1. And then I would be doing a U and going with 4 things here. So I'm making that assumption. The first thing to do is ask a lot of questions. You don't even have to make the questions up. They come in your PropertyLens report, and take detailed notes about the answers that you get. You want to be sure that you know what you are looking at. The second thing is don't fall in love, right? This is a first date. This isn't love time. This is get to know them, find out what they've been doing, find out what their life has been like, really get an understanding of, do you want a second date? And then the third thing that I would be doing as I'm touring this house is I'd be taking a lot of pictures, because how you remember something and how something really is vary greatly. And so having the picture says, hey, you might have thought that that was there, but it's not. Or maybe it's not there and it is. Or, hey, I thought that was newer and the picture says it's older. Or vice versa. What shade of green was that and does it match the couch? You don't know. That's why you take the pictures. So those would be the 3 things that I would do, knowing, of course, that I've already gotten my PropertyLens report.
Well, of course, you should get a PropertyLens report. When I think about touring a house, there's 3 things that you can do that are very simple that can give you a lot of insight to the house. The first is to turn the water on. Does it drain slowly? If people get mad at you for turning the water on, then flush the toilets. Get you and whoever you're touring the house with to flush 2 toilets at the same time, and then turn the shower on. And just listen if anything looks weird. Does the water pressure look weird? Does it smell weird? Does it drain slowly? So those are all things that you can do in an open house. The second thing I would do is to check all the outside doors. Open and close all of the outside doors. And if they stick, that means that the foundation is settling. And you might have a problem, you might not have a problem. But if it's problematic, it can be an expensive fix, because a lot of times you'll have to get an engineer in there to fix it. So the third thing I would do is walk around the house and look where the dirt is. Is everything sloping away from the foundation of the house, or are things sloping towards the foundation of the house? Because you got to think about, if you don't usually tour a house when it's pouring down rain outside. And if it is, you don't go outside. But that's the time when bad things happen to a house. So where's all that water going to go? If your driveway slopes towards your house, and a lot of them do, then that water is going to come down towards the house and potentially damage the foundation or cause water intrusion issues. And that is problematic. So those are the 3 things that I would do. Turn on the water, check the doors, look at the soil.
Beautiful.
And then I'd get a PropertyLens report too. So here's a question we get a lot, John. People say, shouldn't my inspector just find that? What do you say about that?
Inspectors are great. We love inspectors. But the inspector has 2 to 3 hours to see what's visible. And a lot of times they can't cover everything. They're not going to get up on your roof in most cases. Unless you've asked them to test for radon, they're not testing for radon. If you don't ask them specifically to scope the sewer line, they're not scoping the sewer line. There's a lot of things that you can expect out of your inspector. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, right? So if you live in a place that's prone to termites and they see some stuff that looks like sawdust, aka termite poop, they're probably going to tell you got termites. Okay, so you're going to probably need to get the place tented. But what if they don't find that? Or what if all the areas they look at aren't obvious? There's a lot of things along those lines that you need to understand. And having an understanding of what could be helps your inspector direct their attention. So if you're in a new build, you're not going to need your sewer line to be scoped, right? The trees haven't had a chance to grow and stick their roots into the sewer line yet. So don't bother with that. If you're in an area that doesn't have a radon issue, getting a radon test, they'll do it because you're paying for it, but that's a waste of your time and money and a waste of their time. So understanding what you need to be concerned with, I think, is really important because that inspector is there for you. And so make sure that you have independently hired that person so they understand they're not working for either realtor, they're working for you. You want that person to be exceptionally critical because it's your money. So that's what I would say.
So when it comes to inspectors, I think about a couple of things. And no, your inspector won't catch everything. But the first thing I'd say is the inspection comes after you've already put down your earnest money. So you can't get it inspected before you make an offer. So it's after you've made an offer, you've put down your money, you've decided that this is the house. You are now committed to this house. And now you have basically a parent, which is your inspector, coming through and saying, you really should consider this about this house. And it's not always comfortable. So the timing is off on the inspection process. As great as it is, the timing is off. So you want to know ahead of time, what should I be looking out for before I choose to even make an offer on this house? But the second thing I would say is that the inspector can only deal with what they see. They can flip the switches, they can run the water, they can look at the systems, they can do all sorts of stuff like that, which is great. But like in the house that I bought right here, they didn't know that there was an elevated risk of radon until I told them. They didn't know that there was a roof replacement due to an ice dam until I told them. And they didn't know about the flood risk at this property until I told them, because that's not what inspectors are meant to do. And those three things will cause much more damage than potentially, a refrigerator being on its last legs. So it's incredibly important to get an inspection, but also understand that you're getting maybe this much of the picture when the picture is really like this. So we talk a lot about roof age on this podcast. Who cares? Who cares how old the roof is?
Quite honestly, no one and everyone. Age is but one factor. But with roofs, 50 is not the new 30. That just is not how roofs work. In some parts of the country where roofs have great exposure to Mother Nature, understanding the age is really important because there are certain insurance companies that won't insure your roof if it's over 10 years old. If that roof gets hit in year 11, that's pretty much all on you. Then there are parts of the country, like where I'm sitting, where my concrete tile roof has a lifespan of 80 years. It will still be up on this house long after I am just part of the dearly departed, and which is sad in one way and sort of cool in another. So you think about those things. It's like knowing the age of my roof. If I told you, hey, my roof is 23 years old, in some parts of the country, you're getting ready to replace that roof just by default, even if you've had no other issues, because asphalt shingles last about 25 to 30 years. Southern California, your roof's still got 70% of its lifespan left. So age by itself is not a determinant, but it's the quickest way for an insurance company to make a determination. That's why understanding that the condition of your roof is really important, because if it's a 23-year-old roof in grade A shape, like the one on this house, it's beautiful. But it's a 23-year-old roof that's been beaten by hail and is asphalt shingle and is in need of replacement and is an F, that's not so good. Everyone wants to know how old the roof age is but one portion of the total roof equation. It's important to know. That's why it's included in the report, but it's not the only thing to know about the roof.
When you talk about roof age, there's two groups of people: the people who are absolutely concerned about it and the people who should absolutely be concerned about it. The absolutely concerned people are your insurance company. If the roof is over a certain age, then it's an automatic flag to say, we may not insure this house. Or it switches to actual cash value. After Texas, in 7 years, your roof switches to actual cash value. So even if there's a claim on that roof, let's say it lasts 14 years, you're 14 divided by 20, 75% of the cost of that roof is already out the door, and you're going to have to pay for it. Your insurance company is not going to pay for a full roof replacement. So you need to know that going in. So the insurance companies absolutely know that and are obsessed with age and condition of the roof and type of roof and exposures and all that stuff. Insurance companies are obsessed by that piece of information. Buyers aren't, but they should be, because there's a lot of things that could happen based upon the decisions that the insurance company makes or may not make. You may get dropped. You may have to pay for the roof yourself. You may not be covered for certain types of events. There are two constituencies, and everybody should be concerned with not just the age, but the age plus the condition of the roof on the house that they're thinking about buying. We talk to a lot of agents, and there's a lot of good real estate agents out there, but sometimes there aren't. So what don't agents tell you about a property that you might want to buy?
Agents won't tell you anything negative. They only see the good side. They are the nursery school and kindergarten teachers of the world who only see the good side of the child. They won't tell you what's bad. And a lot of them, quite honestly, may not know. As I pointed out, the realtor, who I think is a really good realtor that my daughter used and then we subsequently used, didn't know about houses being in fire zones and didn't know about crime, or if they did, that California, they can't tell you. And didn't know about where the EPA Superfund site was. Right? And this is a really good realtor. So all of those things, at least in my view, were negative things. And so, well, we don't want any of those properties. They might be wonderful properties, but because of other conditions associated with them, they're not acceptable by our standards. So if there's negative things that are known about the property, they should disclose. They should be on the disclosures. But again, disclosure rules vary greatly from state to state, and some states don't even have a disclosure form. You got to ask. You got to know. You got to be the one in the know. You're never going to hear that the property is lousy. It's got great potential and a wonderful personality.
And it could
Right?
dance.
That's what you're going to hear. You're not going to hear that, don't dig too deeply in the backyard because there's whatever might be back there. That's why I think you need to definitely be your own advocate. What do you think a realtor won't tell you?
So when I think about realtors, there's a lot of really great realtors out there. I've had several. But here's what a realtor won't tell you. They won't tell you what they don't know. It's not their job. They're not disclosure advocates. They don't find out what's wrong with the house. They don't know things for one of two reasons. Number one, it hasn't been disclosed by the seller, which happens quite a bit. And number two is they just don't know. They don't know what the flood zones are. They don't know what the hail risk is. They don't know these things. And it's not their job to know. Their job is to make sure that they sell that house. So you want to be sure that you know for two reasons. Number one, you'll know what's going on. But number two, you'll know what questions to ask. If you ask a question of a realtor, they have to do their best to try to find out the answer. Now, the answer might be, I don't know, which is a bit of a sketchy answer. And your response can be, go find out. But they won't tell you what they don't know. You now have the ability to know, to be even more prepared than the realtor. which makes you look like a good buyer or a smart buyer. Maybe not so good because you'll want, you'll want to
Or
say,
their
hey,
worst nightmare.
or their worst nightmare. As a realtor said to me, I never want someone showing up with a PropertyLens report because there's just too much advantage for the buyer when they do that. And that's okay. That's okay. She's a great realtor. But they won't tell you what they don't know. You can find out without having to ask them. All right.
Perfect.
Woo.
Put
Yeah,
it
I'm
to save.
tired. It's a long old podcast there. So for this week's episode of Property of the Week, I'm Bob Frady.
I'm John Siemen.
Until next time, click that subscribe button. Makes us feel better about ourselves.
Makes Bob feel better about himself. I feel pretty good.
All right. Bye.